and 29th of 2020, totaling $145,438.49. There were some significant invoices. First from Advantage Fort Lincoln, $39,617.41. The U.S. Geological Survey, $17,439. Cooley Contracting, $13,500. And Micel Excavating Incorporated, $32,600.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second, excuse me, to approve the invoices of May 22nd and 29th of 2020, totaling $145,438.49. Are there any questions or comments? I would have one comment since it's going to come up later on the agenda. The USGS payment of $17,439 was for a quarter, is that correct?
For what?
I think it's a quarter, correct.
Yes, that's what I thought from the detail indicated it was a quarterly payment. Okay, with no other questions or comments, then Jess can call the roll.
Haman,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye,
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you. The next item is Director's Report. Pat, you have something to present today.
Yes, I included in the packet I kind of pulled together a director's report with information from each department within sanitation. I hope to give these every month. It's just kind of an overview, and I don't intend to go through each item specifically on here. I'll just kind of touch on highlights. And I hope that the collection of this data will help the district make informed decisions in the long run. I just think it's nice to have it together for everybody to see. So with that in mind, I'll just kind of go through it a little bit. As far as the treatment plant goes, we're still at 0 violations. Last month and for the year, we've almost gone an entire year without violations. Another testament to the rotary drums effectiveness. Everything's good there. Pre-treatment is going normal. In maintenance, I do have a couple things I want to touch on. First, I kind of list in this table I put together scheduled and unscheduled maintenance. And as you guys are aware, as a part of a new requirement with SRF, we are required to have an asset management program. And we're looking at asset management softwares. We hope over time that with the use of that software, we can become more proactive and reduce our unscheduled maintenance and have it more done as preventive and scheduled maintenance, which is more cost efficient in the long run. The other thing I want to report in maintenance is last week, we had our 500 horsepower aeration blower fail, leaving the district with only one working 800 horsepower blower. The blower is still running, has a history of faulting due to heat in the summer. This trend has held true this year with the working 800 horsepower blower faulting for a few hours nearly every day over the past 2 weeks. Normally when the 800 horsepower would trip because of heat, we would turn on the 500 horsepower to maintain air to the plant. Without a backup blower to run during the few hours of downtime per day, we have seen increased ammonia levels at the discharge. Currently, the level is not high enough to become a violation, but it is closer than we would like, leaving us without any room to absorb any other disturbances to the plant. The treatment facility is primarily a biological process, and in the event that the running blower should completely fail, the plant without air will cease to treat wastewater. Were the plant to go without air for even 24 hours, it would likely take weeks to recover once a blower was in place, causing numerous violations per day, of which each could be assigned a significant fine. Beyond fines, there would be a very significant cost associated with measures required to minimize the deleterious effect on the river and to prepare the plant for a restart. For these reasons, we put in an emergency PO to both have the 500 horsepower blower repaired, which could take approximately a month, and to rent a portable blower to use as a supplement to our current blower faults and as backup should the running 800 horsepower blower fail altogether. The treatment plant is currently under construction. kind of as a side note, and during the construction, our 800 horsepower blower will be replaced with new, more efficient blowers. And the 500 horsepower blower, which is out for repair, is intended to stay as a backup for the 2 new blowers being installed. I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention that we did put out for emergency POs, and the emergency state of this and the significance of why we hurried up on this process. As far as going down the list of the table, then we got collection system summary. I don't really have any notes on that. I hope that, again, further data and month to month, we'll be able to compare things and make better decisions, see if there's places we can improve at or places we're excelling at, and how we can just continue moving forward. The same as with the waste collection summary. It's nice to pull this up. We know that we briefly mentioned it last board meeting, but there is a possibility of being able to get a grant for a cardboard recycle truck, and it's in anticipation of like this, the Amazon event where more and more things are coming through that, and more cardboard is building up. So it's kind of, I think it'd be nice to have this and be able to track how that recyclables is moving with that effect and how we should move forward. Last, go ahead.
Do we only recycle the corrugated or cereal boxes and all of that? Would that be included in cardboard recycling?
In this case, cardboard is separate, but we also have recyclables commingled. It's kind of in the way we don't really collect cardboard individually right now, other than we pull it out of kind of landfill. There's no like place for the public to put their cardboard for us to collect it. And that's kind of where that cardboard truck was going to come into place. With that, we would be able to collect it at the street versus pulling it out of the landfill and moving it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how it's laid out. And then there's a solid waste summary. And I don't have anything to add to that at this point in time. We're still pulling numbers together. One thing I did have on waste collection and solid waste is the code enforcement, trying to track how much that is played into and how much that brings to our landfill as a separate entity. So we're going to try to get a hold on, where that lies in the whole situation. And then lastly on this report is I put a financials a year to date within that, just for the board to be able to view and kind of know where we stand every month. And that kind of concludes the director's report.
I did have one question, and maybe I need an off-screen lesson on this, or maybe you or Emily can give me a quick response. Basically, when I look at the amended budget column on that report and year-to-date balance and the unencumbered balance, I might have thought that the difference between what we've spent year to date and our amended budget ought to be the unencumbered, but it's not always.
So I think, and this might be a little learning curve with the financials and BS&A. When we have a PO that is encumbered in the previous year, and that is we're encumbering the funds from the previous year's budget, but it's carrying over to the next year's, that is recorded as a budget amendment. So that might be some of what you're seeing in the amended budget. Whatever is unencumbered is what is available beyond that. That doesn't mean that's all that wasn't spent. It just means that's all that wasn't encumbered currently in a purchase order. But the amended budget, and I think, and that is confusing by calling it amended, when those carryover encumbrances, it's recorded as a budget adjustment. So that would say amendment.
So there really should not be any way of essentially cross-footing of those columns then in all cases. Right.
Yeah.
And the percent of the budget used column, would that be an accurate reflection of where we really are year to date on our budget? I mean, I see most of them are in the 40% range, and that sort of makes sense that at 5 months we might be in the 40% range.
Yeah, and I would say though it is basing it off of those amendments.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was gonna save this for miscellaneous and we can talk about it in more detail then, but I had kind of discussed with Pat, I have issued a budget calendar, but I didn't schedule a date for our budget meeting. I'd like to schedule a date with you all for that. And we can discuss that later or you know, not during a formalized meeting, but I do have on the calendar to try to get the budget books finalized and distributed by August 17th. Looking at the calendar, it might make more sense to push that back to August 14th and then potentially have a meeting with you guys on the 18th. The date range for committee of the whole is August 20th through 28th. I haven't had final dates yet, but would like to get that meeting completed with you before committee of the whole. That's what Pat thought would be make the most sense. So
Okay.
just to put that out there and have it on your minds.
Okay, thank you. Was there, Pat, back to the budgetary numbers, you didn't see anything that struck you as giving you any concern as to where we are year to date at this point?
Not at this time, and I admit some of it is, we're coming through the budget process now, and everybody's getting their budgets to me, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around every department's budget. There's some things it may be nearly spent, but maybe it's a one-time or two-time expense, and we don't plan to have more, so trying to track down what all these actually are used for and how they're used, I'm still ongoing, but I don't see any large concerns right now.
And I know that you all are, both you and Emily and the mayor are closely monitoring what might happen on the revenue side due to, COVID, our businesses being down, and those issues with our income side. Correct.
We've earmarked places that, should we have shortfalls, we've created some sacrificial lands, if you will, on some things, if it becomes necessary.
And just as a kind of FYI, we also had a meeting yesterday regarding some expense reimbursement grants that we're pursuing through the Indiana Finance Authority and FEMA. So we're working on, and so the sanitation district is part of the initial steps that I've already taken because we operate under the same tax ID number. I am at the point where I'm gathering information to submit projects. I'm working on FEMA, Beth Fields is working on IFA. So we're kind of just taking all these things in and looking at which program is the best fit for what types of expenses. FEMA is very limited in what that reimbursement would consist of. We haven't seen anything as far as revenue, lost revenue assistance at this point, but things are changing a lot on a day-to-day basis right now. So we're just kind of taking things as they come, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I know with the, obviously our billings are lagging behind. So we will see more as the months go on too. Okay, anything else under directors, Pat?
I do not have anything else.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Item number 4 is being tabled today, which takes us to item number 5, the recommendation to award the bid for digester lid painting and spot repair.
Yes, Madam President and board members, at our last board meeting, we received quotes from 2 contractors on painting our digester lids. The quotes have been reviewed by Pat Smoker and myself. It is our recommendation to the board to award this digester lid painting to Protective Coatings of Dayton, Ohio in the amount of $96,000. Protective Coatings are the lowest and most responsive and responsible company to quote this project. I did attach the bid tab, and funds are available for this project.
Any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Bucksey?
Motion for recommendation to approve and award the digester lid painting to Protective Coatings of Dayton, Ohio in the amount of $96,000.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to award the painting of digester lids to Protective Coatings of Dayton, Ohio in an amount of $96,000. Any further questions or comments? If not, Jess, will you call the roll?
Amon,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. The
Thank
next
you.
item of business is an update on the USGS Super Gauge project. And we have a guest. Miles, is it just spelled like it looks, or said like it looks, Downhauer?
Yes, exactly how it looks.
Please introduce yourself and carry on.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen now. So I am Miles Downauer with the U.S. Geological Survey based out of Indianapolis. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I'll just go ahead and get started. So the USGS Super Gauge site at Richmond has been operational since October 20th, 2017. And this update is going to cover up until the end of 2019, which just allows for a more comparable breakdown of the data. Here's a few pictures, and this is to highlight that a real effort is made to visit this site on the full range of hydrologic conditions, whether it be low flow, high flow, cold weather, warm weather. We just want to make sure we're capturing everything. And this really allows us to minimize any extrapolation on models that are created at this site. So I don't know if anyone's interested, but that center picture is April 3rd, 2018, which was actually the highest flow since this gauge has been installed. So we were really fortunate to get out there and get a sample on that day. USGS field crews visited the site 60 to 70 times from October 2017 to December 2019. And those visits are made up of 6 to 8 visits per year for stream flow discharge measurements and 21 to 25 visits per year to service the continuous monitors and collect samples. And the total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and suspended sediment models that are developed are based on these continuous water quality monitors. So it's really important that we're out there often to make sure these are reading as accurately as possible, because that's really what all of the results for this project are based on. You can see that picture in the bottom left. The silver monitor is our nitrate monitor, and the blue monitor is our 5-parameter water quality monitor. And the center picture is some of the snakes we get to see every time we're out there. We usually have to scoop out a handful every time we get the monitors out. They seem to really love that setup down there on the bridge. So for the 2017 to 2019 calendar year, we collected 50 nutrient samples and 45 sediment samples, plus 2 to 3 QC samples per year. And the pictures on the left are just to show our sampling technique. So we usually sample using the equal width increment method, which will split the stream up into 10 equal widths and then lower our sampler through the entire water column at each of those 10 spots, just to make sure our samples are representative of the stream. And that's just to make sure we're not missing any inflows from the banks that may not have had a chance to mix in completely yet. For the status of our continuous and discrete samples, the continuous data is approved and published up to 2020, and all of that data is found at that link right there. And all of our discrete lab analyzed samples are approved and published up to October 10th, 2019. And again, all of that lab data is at that link right there. For the surrogate models, the total nitrogen and total phosphorus models have been developed, peer-reviewed, and approved as of a couple weeks ago. And the suspended sediment model is still in review right now. And the reason for that is the suspended sediment samples take significantly more time to come back from the lab. So we had to wait a couple extra months to make sure we had a sufficient number of samples to develop that model. And then once all of these models are developed, we'll be writing a report or publishing a report to describe the model development and any changes throughout the 3 years of the project. So we hope to have that published by the end of this year. At least that's the plan right now. And this slide, I thought this was interesting, but this shows stream flow data at East Fork Whitewater River at Abington. And this is for historical reference. So the USGS has monitored stream flow at this site since the 1960s. And the left graph shows that average annual stream flow has been on an increasing trend over the last 50 years. And whether that be from climate change, land use change, or drainage development, whatever the reason is, the fact is that there's more water coming through on average. And in addition to increasing annual stream flows, the right graph shows the intensity of storm or high flow events has been increasing as well, and likely will continue into the future. So with more water, there's more possibility and ability to transport contaminants, and there's more erosion potential. So it kind of highlights the importance of long-term monitoring. All right, and this slide is summarizing the daily concentrations that were estimated by these models. So in the black boxes under each of these constituents, that is the surrogate equation or the model equation that was developed. So for total phosphorus, we found that discharge, which is Q, and turbidity were the best explanatory variables for total phosphorus. And for total nitrogen, it was nitrate plus nitrite, which is continuous, and specific conductance. And for suspended sediment, it was discharge again and turbidity. And those values at the bottom are a summary of the range and average of concentrations from October 2017 to December 2019. So if I won't read those off, but if anyone's interested there, they are right there. This slide shows the loads per year, and all of these numbers are in tons. So the loads are calculated by multiplying the daily concentrations that I mentioned on the previous slide by the daily mean stream flow, and that gives the mass of the constituent that's being transported at this site. So all of these models are applicable only to this site where the samples are collected. And as you can see, 2017 was a partial year, so you can't, learn much from that. But you can see for each one of these from 2018 compared to 2019, we did have a decrease in the total tons that were transported past this site for all three of these. So there was a decrease, which is interesting for whatever reason that may be, This slide this is another look at the loads for each of these constituents, but it's broken down by season. So as you can see, most of the transport for all of these constituents is occurring during spring and winter, and the least transport is occurring during fall. And this is kind of a validation of some assumptions we may have about, regular hydrologic conditions. So it's good to have this validation and be able to visually see that. And this also helps keep water managers informed and allows for a more targeted management approach. This lays out the plans for this year and beyond. So those models that I showed will be displayed on that website, the nrtwq.usgs website. And it's a really nice website, and it creates an interactive graph to display these concentrations and loads for any time period down to the hour. So whatever period you're interested in, whether it be in the middle of the night, on a weekend, you can make sure that since the continuous data are running every 15 minutes, pretty much everything's going to be captured. So it is a benefit of the rich data set of that continuous monitoring. And again, throughout the year, we're going to continue to clean and calibrate the continuous monitors twice per month. And we're going to continue to collect 8 to 20 discrete samples this year. And that's to make sure the continuous data and the discrete samples are still statistically valid and match those models that were developed. And then for the bottom, for the report, based on these models, once the report is published, it gives the potential to showcase any improvements within the basin, at least as far as nutrients and sediment go. And it allows you to visualize how money spent on recent improvements is showing any results. So these models can be applied back to when the continuous monitors were first put in the stream. So we'll be able, once they're published and approved and everything and put online, you'll be able to look at those concentrations and loads back to October 2017 when the site was installed. So any changes in the water, you'll have that first year or two to get a baseline, and then any changes or improvements to the river that may have resulted from any recent construction or updates. Hopefully you would be able to see that reflected in the water quality. So you can see how your money spent is, showing results. And as far as the update, that pretty much covers everything that we've done so far in a very condensed version. So does anyone have any questions about anything that's occurred so far for this project?
No, I guess I would look to our staff maybe for some insight as to what they see as having been benefits or of coming from, how they're using this information in what they're doing.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. We're coming around to a new permit cycle right now for NPDES permit for the plant. A lot of our limits are based upon baseline river because we discharge to the Whitewater River. And how they set your limit is kind of based on, there's a total allowable and there's a background, and then you kind of have what's left over, and that's kind of what we can discharge. Recently, at our last NPDES permit, we received a copper limit. We had 3 years to monitor that, and then it was to go into effect. Well, we'd already placed this super gauge in the river, and we were able to use this data to have a more reflective background of the river. And when we submitted that back to IDEM, they reran our load allocation and actually removed copper from our limit, which is huge. I mean, the more limits we get, we have to pass those down to industries and everything else so that we are able to meet them. So this is very huge, and making sure that we get limits that are actually reflective of what we're discharging to.
So even though the monitoring system itself does not measure copper by analysis of data you do get from the monitoring system, you could then somehow extrapolate that to the copper?
Yeah, we pulled some samples discreetly when we were starting to put this in. We pulled some samples for that, and we also monitored our own facilities discharge. I think we were at once a week at that point in time. And what really helped the model is there's I don't want to say a fudge factor, but essentially they have to take a limited amount of data and then apply a multiplication factor to that to equal out to what they think would be a year. So if you have a couple sets and you have any kind of anomaly or a slightly high number, that really throws it off when you multiply it out. So we had enough data then from both the river and from plant discharge monitoring that it showed that we didn't have any potential and necessary for a copper limit. But besides copper, in our plant limit, I mean, this ranges from everything we had limit to, all the metals, the phosphorus, the solids, the nitrogen, all that is based upon what the river's background is. In addition to this, I believe this shows reflected, this is downstream of where some of the CSOs were in the collection system as well. So as we continue to separate, we should see that basin get a little cleaner, I would imagine, as we continue to remove those CSOs.
So you can, I guess, extrapolate, you know, where I think Miles on a previous slide was showing the pretty significant reduction in loads between was it 18 and 19? Then
Yes.
you could extrapolate, you know, so we locally can sort of say, we understand the reasons for that and the positive things that we have done as far as capturing stormwater, wastewater treatment, et cetera.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of variables, yeah, but that's kind of what we would have anticipated seeing from what we've done. And it'll help us determine just how much effect we have. I mean, because we know that there's, we're a non-source, or we are a point source discharge, but there's a lot of non-point, as you can tell, the extra rain, there's runoff from homes and agriculture and things like that. It's kind of always hard to tell how much impact any one source makes, and we kind of can't quantify some of these others real easily to their source. But yeah, we would have expected our what we've done to have improved the quality of the basin.
Now, you mentioned the sources. One of the things in the narrative that USGS provided said that the continuous estimate of nitrogen and phosphorus concentration and loads may identify time periods that are critical for nutrient transfer and may help identify potential sources of these nutrients. Do you think you could that we could ultimately ever? I mean, I don't think that means that we're directly pointing to a single source, are we?
Probably not, but you could probably identify whether this is, and I can let Miles speak to this some, but you could probably identify not a single individual, but you could probably identify it as agricultural or homeowners with fertilizers and things like that. Yes.
So it's not necessarily, I guess, a tool for any kind of enforcement, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, at this point in time, we wouldn't really, there's no real ability to enforce any of those non-points, but it kind of helps us as regulations come down the line. It kind of helps. It also helps the state determine where those need to be. I mean, if we're not the cause, then adding regulation to us really doesn't make any. You can't really improve it if we're not the source. So it kind of helps. It kind of helps pinpoint that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other question? Or now, at this point in time, we're not. Are we still under a 3-year agreement? And do we have another 3-year agreement coming up, or did we just approve the second 3-year?
We have not yet approved a second 3-year. I have to look back. I think this one goes until October of this year. Is that correct, Miles?
It goes until November. I believe it's November 15th.
Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah, I think I saw at the end the cost, et cetera. Okay. And the fact that the USGS does basically share the cost of that as well.
Correct. And we would continue to share that cost for an additional 3-year proposal as well at the same percentage.
And it looks like on a quarterly basis, it would be close to what we just paid this month for a quarter. Okay.
I believe it was somewhat close.
Aman, Greg, did you have any questions? looks like it's $400 more, so $430 more. Okay. If no other questions, I thank you very much for your presentation, for taking time to prepare that and to speak to us. And
Oh yeah, no problem.
And I know that Pat and the group here locally have told us on several occasions the value of the information that they are getting. So we appreciate that.
Well, that's great. All right, am I all right to stop sharing this then, or did anyone want to see any of the slides again?
They actually provided the slides in our handbook as well, or our meeting information. So
Okay,
we have
great.
that. Thank you very much. I guess that takes us to Elijah and the project status update. He probably has to unmute.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to get to the button. First project on the list, I actually haven't highlighted it, but it's our Northwest 13th Street Interceptor project. The siphon crews are hoping to be here still, hopefully next week. I think they came in and we're trimming some trees to get prepared for that. So they should be here anytime. Second project, our CS06 storage project. That one is essentially finished. They milled and paved almost all of it. There are still a few utility cuts that Milestone is also doing for those utilities. So they were working on finishing that up, but that project turned out well. We should have, like I've said in the past, some decrease in cost. We're working on those final quantity measurements now, and we'll get those in a final change order here in the next probably month or so, so we can get that project all closed out. Next projects are rotary drum thickener project here at the treatment plant. They did come in over the past month or so and complete most of the punch list items. There's just a few remaining things that are yet to complete. So they're working on getting that completed and all wrapped up. So good to have that one nearing a close as well. College Avenue sewer separation project. We did some additional potholing, an exterior investigation, and we've got a few final design options, I guess, on paper, and with the contractor right now, he's reviewing those to determine what's going to work best, what's going to be the most cost-effective way of, and from a constructability standpoint, what's possible. Like I've said in the past, I know why they didn't do this in the past, because this is probably one of the most complicated blocks in the city as far as trying to separate. So but we do have some options. It just ends up being fairly deep sewers for part of it. So next project is our West Side Interceptor project. We held a project status meeting. We have 50% design in hand, so we're reviewing that. We did hold a meeting regarding that 50% design with the consultant and went over some things. We're checking a few things out, but I think we're narrowing down where everything's going to be and what it's exactly going to look like. So moving forward with that, we do still have our application into SRF, and we had a few comments, normal type things. So we're working on that along with a few documents that we need to get prepared, some public notices for the PR and things like that. So over the next meeting or two, you'll likely see some information come out for that. Next project is our wastewater treatment plant levy project. We did hold a design meeting with a consultant on that one as well. We had some additional soil borings that were completed, and we're working on getting that design finalized and all the permits applications in for those different agencies, but we anticipate construction actually and bidding to happen next year and not this year. So you'll see that in next year's budget instead of coming back and doing it in this year's budget. So some of those permits, because of, I think, kind of what COVID has done to some of the different agencies, some of them are pretty far out. So it's going to just work out better to plan on bidding it first thing next spring. And then that is all I have for this meeting. Unless somebody has questions.
Any questions? If not, thank you very much, Elijah. And that takes us to miscellaneous. Emily, did you have anything else, or did you cover all your budget and things before?
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, my initial budget calendar had the budget books being distributed on the 17th, and then the 20th through the 28th as the range for committee of the whole. But that said, it might make more sense for me to try to push that back to the 14th. That way I can distribute them on a Friday, and you could potentially have the weekend and Monday, and then maybe we could do our meeting on the 18th. If not, we can always look at adjusting our different dates, but that's what kind of makes the most sense, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and August 18th is would be our regular scheduled meeting.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be a problem. And I think would that then be a budget meeting? I think that we usually have like an hour before a regular schedule and open it to the public.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Anything else miscellaneous for us today? Let's see if anybody's nodding. If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's been a motion and second to adjourn. Jess, will you call the roll?
Amon,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, and we are adjourned. And I guess we will reconvene for a stormwater meeting.
Ready?
Turn it over to Greg.
I can call to order the June 9th, 2020 Richmond Sanitary District Stormwater Management Board meeting. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes for May 12th, 2020.
President Steens,
Mom,
motion to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2020 as presented.
I will second the motion.
we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the May 12th, 2020 meeting. Jessica, will you call the roll, please?
Amon,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next on the agenda is the approval of invoices for check date run May 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, 2020, totaling $92,496.67. Can I have a motion, please?
President Steens, I'll make a motion to approve the invoice from checks dates May 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of 2020, totaling $92,496.67. Two significant invoices were Commonwealth Engineers for $23,234.50 and Cooley Contracting for $49,404.77.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve invoices for check date run May 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th of 2020, totaling $92,496.67. Jessica, call the roll, please.
Amon,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next on the agenda is the project status update.
Yes, I have one main update on the storm side. That's our 2019 miscellaneous storm sewer improvements project. That project is fully completed. All the asphalt and restoration's been done. So now we visited them a few times as we've seen some rain. But the more larger rains we get, we'll make sure to go back to those sites and see how they're performing, and hopefully we'll see some good improvements there, and decreased amount of flooding associated with those areas and previous problems. So that's all I have on the storm side.
Well, I have one question about,
Uh-huh.
so I'm not seeing any other storm projects really up here. Do you guys have anything coming up that you're looking at to make some improvements in that?
Yeah, we've got a few larger projects that we've identified and been working on some potential solutions to. Big enough though that funding is an issue, especially as we move in here to kind of the final sets of projects for our long-term control plan. So we still have a few smaller things that we'll likely do, but we are doing some rehab right now on it's not a large amount, but some of the brick sewers where we did the investigation in the past year or two. We've went and done some and are in the process, I guess, of doing some just patching here and there on some of our storm infrastructure. So not flooding related, but infrastructure related, making sure we're keeping up with any kind of deterioration that might be happening with some of those brick sewers. So a lot of the larger ones have been turned into storm sewers. They used to be a combined sewer. Not all, a few of them are still sanitary, but trying to patch or repair those missing bricks that we found during that investigation on the storm side. So.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, does anyone have anything miscellaneous? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I so move.
Second.
Jessica, call the roll, please.
Amon,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Greg.
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Adjourn.